Every human being carries within themselves a constant voice, a running dialogue that never ceases. It is the voice you hear when you wake up in the morning, when you face a decision, and even when you are quiet in a room alone. This voice is the most influential sound you will ever hear, because it does not come from outside, it comes from within. And the truth is, what you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the reality you begin to accept, and eventually the reality you begin to live. If your inner dialogue is full of doubt, defeat, and discouragement, you will begin to carry yourself in ways that reflect those very beliefs. But if your self-talk is filled with courage, affirmation, and confidence, you start to build a new atmosphere inside you that guides your outward actions. The power of inner dialogue lies in its ability to shape identity before circumstances ever confirm it. Many people walk through life waiting for someone else to validate them, to tell them that they are worthy, capable, or destined for greatness. They do not realize that they hold this power already. The voice you trust the most is your own voice, and when you speak something enough times, your subconscious accepts it as fact. This is why when someone repeats negative things about themselves, I'm not good enough, I always fail, nothing works out for me, their mind begins to find proof to match those statements. It is not that the world is against them, it is that they have set up their inner dialogue to expect resistance and defeat. What you say to yourself consistently is like planting seeds. Words are never wasted. They either grow into weeds or they grow into trees that provide strength and fruit. A person who feeds their mind daily with negative self-talk is planting weeds that choke their potential. Over time, those weeds spread and take over every thought until doubt becomes their natural response to opportunity. On the other hand, the person who speaks life into themselves is planting seeds of confidence, vision, and determination. Those seeds, when watered through repetition, grow roots in the subconscious and eventually bear fruit in the form of resilience, clarity, and unstoppable drive. It is not enough to hope that good things will happen or to simply wait for circumstances to shift. Change begins with the way you speak to yourself. If you start your day telling yourself that you are focused, disciplined, and capable, you prepare your mind to notice opportunities that align with those words. You begin to see solutions instead of problems, doors instead of walls. The language of your inner dialogue directs your focus, and whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on lack, your life will feel limited. If you focus on growth, opportunities begin to reveal themselves. The reason this inner dialogue is so powerful is because it bypasses the need for outside approval. External voices can encourage you for a moment, but the lasting transformation happens when your own voice begins to echo words of strength and possibility. A person may hear 1,000 compliments from others, but if they do not affirm themselves, the encouragement fades quickly. The opposite is also true, even in the absence of external affirmation. If someone speaks life into their own soul, they begin to rise with a confidence that no one can take away. You become the product of your words because your mind cannot distinguish between what is said as a passing thought and what is said as a declaration of truth. The more often you repeat a statement, the more your mind adopts it as a belief. And beliefs are powerful because they shape habits, and habits shape destiny. For example, a person who says daily, "I am disciplined and focused," begins to make choices that align with that statement. Soon, their behavior reflects the very words they have spoken, even if they did not feel disciplined when they first said it. That is the mystery and the beauty of inner dialogue. It does not wait for feelings. It creates them. When you realize the weight of the words you speak to yourself, you begin to treat self-talk not as casual conversation, but as strategy. It becomes a tool for transformation, not just a way of passing time in your thoughts. This is why you must carefully guard the phrases you repeat in your mind. Every time you tell yourself you cannot, you close a door. Every time you tell yourself you can, you open one. The world you live in tomorrow is being shaped by the words you are repeating inside today. If someone wants to change their life, they must first change their language with themselves. Inner dialogue is not merely a reflection of your mood, it is the architect of your future. By disciplining your words and intentionally choosing affirmations of strength, purpose, and clarity, you position yourself to live at a higher level. The transformation does not start with circumstances. It starts with the voice inside, the one that has been speaking all along. The only question is whether you will allow it to speak defeat or whether you will train it to declare victory. Would you like me to move on and expand Keynote 2 in the same 700 word style before we merge everything into the full script? The words you repeat to yourself do more than influence your thoughts. They begin to shape who you believe you are. Identity is not formed overnight, nor is it built simply by external labels placed on you. It is carved and constructed by the language that consistently flows through your mind. When you tell yourself something long enough, whether it is true or not, your mind embraces it as reality. The statements you rehearse in the privacy of your heart eventually become the framework of your identity, the lens through which you interpret every experience in life. This is why some people can be talented, intelligent, and gifted, yet never live up to their potential. Deep inside, they have been repeating words that limit their identity. They may say, "I'm not smart enough," "I don't deserve success," or "I'll never rise above this level." Those words may seem harmless in the moment, but the repetition of such declarations becomes a silent agreement with defeat. Over time, their actions begin to mirror those limiting beliefs, and they sabotage opportunities because their identity cannot hold onto a reality they do not believe they deserve. On the other hand, when a person chooses to speak life, even in moments of struggle, something begins to shift internally. Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," they declare, "I am built to overcome." Instead of saying, "I will always struggle," they speak, "I am learning, I am growing, I am stronger every day." Every day. At first, these words may feel like empty statements, but repetition turns them into convictions. And once those convictions take root, they form a new identity. That new identity becomes the anchor that guides behavior, choices, and expectations. The power of words lies in their ability to create alignment between who you are on the inside and what you experience on the outside. When your inner dialogue consistently affirms your worth, your actions begin to align with the belief that you are worthy. If you tell yourself that you are disciplined, your decisions start to reflect discipline. If you tell yourself you are creative, solutions begin to flow through your mind. Identity always precedes action, and words are the building blocks of identity. Without changing what you say about yourself, it is nearly impossible to change what you do with yourself. Every culture, every family, and every individual has inherited words spoken over them. Some of these words have been life-giving words that affirm potential, dignity, and possibility. Others have been damaging words that wounded and placed limits on identity. But the good news is that no matter what words have been spoken over you by others, you hold the power to rewrite the script by what you say to yourself. The voice you hear most often is your own, and it has the authority to override the labels of your past. If you choose to speak life, hope, and truth, you can reshape the foundation of your identity regardless of how others have defined you. When you begin to see words as instruments of creation, you stop using them carelessly. You understand that every sentence is either constructing a prison or building a pathway. Identity is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of design. And the language you adopt daily is what draws the blueprint. This is why you must speak deliberately, because your future self is being shaped by the words you declare today. If you want to see a different outcome in your life, begin by speaking words that call forth that outcome into existence. Consider how children grow into the labels repeatedly spoken to them. A child told consistently, "You are bright, you are capable, you are loved," carries that identity into their adulthood. Meanwhile, a child who hears only, "You're a failure, you're not enough, you're a problem," grows up with those words echoing as part of their self-perception. The difference is not in the child's innate worth, but in the words that shape their identity. Adults are no different. Every one of us is still being molded by the inner dialogue we permit to dominate our thoughts. If you want to change your identity, you cannot wait until your feelings agree. Feelings are followers, not leaders. The words you choose to repeat are the leaders, and eventually your emotions will adjust to the identity created by your declarations. This is why people who speak affirmations with consistency begin to see their confidence grow, not because circumstances changed instantly, but because their self-perception evolved through the language they embraced. They began to see themselves through new eyes, and when identity shifted, so did behavior. The truth is that your life will always rise or fall to the level of your self-identity. And your self-identity is nothing more than the reflection of the words you believe about yourself. You cannot consistently outperform the picture you hold in your heart, and that picture is painted by language. Speak defeat, and you will live small. Speak life, and you will expand into the fullness of your purpose. Your identity is waiting to be shaped, and the tool in your hands is the power of words. Would you like me to continue and expand Keynote 333 Day Transformation Principle in the same 700th word style before we assemble everything into the complete script? There is a reason habits are formed through repetition. The human mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant consistently begins to grow, regardless of whether the seed is good or bad. The words you speak to yourself operate the same way. One positive statement said once may encourage you for a moment, but when you repeat that statement daily, it begins to leave an imprint on your subconscious. And when repetition is sustained for even a short period, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to reprogram the way you think and the way you see yourself. That is the foundation of the 3-day transformation principle. 3 days may not seem long, but it is long enough to initiate a shift in perspective. The mind is naturally resistant to change because it clings to patterns that feel familiar. Negative self-talk, even though it is destructive, can be comfortable routine. The brain repeats it because it has rehearsed it for so long. But when you interrupt that pattern with intentional words of life, spoken consistently for 3 days, you break the rhythm of negativity. You introduce a new rhythm, one that begins to challenge old beliefs and create new possibilities. The reason 3 days is so significant is because it is short enough to commit to fully, yet powerful enough to spark momentum. Anyone can decide to speak differently to themselves for 3 days. It does not require a year-long commitment or a lifelong vow. It requires a focused, intentional choice to take control of your words for a set period of time. But what happens in those 3 days that you begin to taste the power of new language? You feel the weight of negative thoughts losing their grip, and you sense the possibility of a new reality taking shape. Once you experience that shift, you realize that this practice is not just possible, it is necessary for the life you want to build. During those 3 days, your words act like a reset button. If you have been feeding your mind with discouragement for years, it will not vanish instantly. But those 3 days give you a glimpse of what it feels like to walk in freedom from that weight. You begin to prove to yourself that change is possible, not in theory, but in practice. This builds momentum because once the mind sees evidence that a new pattern is forming, it becomes easier to continue. What felt forced on day 1 begins to feel natural by day 3. And what felt unnatural before, like speaking words of encouragement to yourself, begins to feel necessary for survival. Think about how the body responds to new discipline. If you decide to exercise after months of inactivity, the first day feels awkward and uncomfortable. The second day may still carry resistance. But by the third day, the body starts to recognize the rhythm and respond with energy. The mind works the same way. Mind works the same way. On the first day of speaking new words, you may feel like you are pretending. On the second day, your mind may argue with you, trying to pull you back into old patterns. But on the third day, something shifts. The resistance begins to weaken, and the new declarations begin to take hold. That is the doorway to transformation. The power of 3 days is also symbolic. It represents a beginning, a process, and a new stage. The first day is about decision. You make the choice to speak differently. The second day is about discipline. You continue even when it feels unnatural. The third day is about demonstration. You see proof that the new words are beginning to shape your thinking. And once you cross that threshold, the momentum carries you forward. Transformation does not wait for years of practice to begin. It begins the moment you align your words with your desired future. And 3 days is long enough to ignite that alignment. When you commit to speaking intentionally for 3 days, you also gain clarity about what has been poisoning your inner dialogue. You notice the old phrases that try to creep back in, the ones you have repeated unconsciously for years. The practice forces you to confront how often you have agreed with defeat without realizing it. By replacing those phrases with affirmations of life, you take back authority over your thoughts. You no longer live as a victim of your mind. You become the master of it. That awareness alone is transformative because it reveals that you are not powerless. You can choose what you say, and by choosing, you change what you believe. It is important to recognize that transformation is not about perfection, but about progress. Speaking intentionally for 3 days will not erase a lifetime of negative patterns. It will create a crack in the wall of limitation. Light begins to shine through that crack, and with continued effort, the wall eventually collapses. Those 3 days are the spark that sets the fire of change, the small step that proves the larger journey is possible. And once you prove to yourself that you can take control of your words for 3 days, you realize you can do it for 3 weeks, 3 months, and beyond. The 3-day transformation principle is not about magic. It is about momentum. It shows you that the words you choose today are powerful enough to shift the atmosphere of your mind tomorrow. And once you shift the atmosphere of your mind, you shift the direction of your life. Would you like me to go ahead and expand Keynote 4's living out the words you speak into a 700 word section as well before I combine everything into the full script with intro, hook, and conclusion. The greatest proof of the power of words is not simply in what you say, but in how your life begins to align with those very declarations. When you speak to yourself consistently, your words do not remain abstract thoughts floating in your mind. They start to manifest in your behavior, in your decisions, and eventually in your results. The words you speak set a direction, and whether you realize it or not, your actions start following the path your words have carved. When a person repeatedly declares, "I am disciplined, I am focused, I am capable," those statements begin to function like a compass. Even if at first they do not feel entirely true, the repetition of such words starts to guide choices. Instead of reaching for distractions, that person begins to value productivity. Instead of procrastinating, they find themselves moving toward tasks with more intention. The words spoken are no longer just sounds. They become silent commands shaping the subconscious. And the subconscious, once persuaded, influences every decision without requiring constant effort. Living out the words you speak is a natural process because the mind seeks alignment between belief and action. When you keep telling yourself something, your mind eventually accepts it as part of your identity. And identity is powerful because people will always act in harmony with who they believe they are. If you believe you are undisciplined, you will keep making choices that confirm that identity. But if you declare consistently that you are disciplined, your mind will push you to act in ways that validate that declaration. Your words create the identity, and the identity produces the action. This is why it is dangerous to speak carelessly about yourself. If you tell yourself, "I always fail," your mind begins to look for ways to validate that statement. Failure becomes less about circumstances and more about the identity you have embraced. On the other hand, if you tell yourself, "I learn from every challenge," then even setbacks take on a different meaning. Instead of being moments of defeat, they become opportunities for growth. The same situation produces different outcomes depending on the words you have spoken over yourself, because those words determine how you interpret and respond to the event. When you begin to live out your words, the people around you notice as well. The way you carry yourself changes, the confidence in your posture shifts, and your energy communicates something new. Others may not know the private declarations you have been making, but they can see the results. This is how transformation becomes contagious. Your new language produces new behavior, and your new behavior inspires others to adjust their own self-talk. Without preaching a sermon or forcing change, you become living proof that words create reality. What makes this principle so powerful is that it does not depend on instant perfection. You do not have to feel completely confident on the first day you speak affirmations. You do not have to fully believe the words when you first say them. The act of speaking itself begins the process. Over time, those words sink deeper, and as they shape your inner world, your outer world adjusts to match. This is why living out your words feels gradual at first, but undeniable in the long run. People often underestimate the power of small, repeated declarations. But those small declarations accumulate, building momentum until they become visible in every area of your life. It is important to remember that living out your words is not about pretending to be someone you are not. It is about calling forth the potential that has always been inside you, the discipline, the strength, the creativity, the vision. It is already there, waiting to be unlocked. Your words act like keys, turning the locks that have kept that potential hidden. As you continue to speak, you continue to unlock, and as you continue to unlock, you begin to live in alignment with the person you were always meant to be. This is why commitment to speaking the right words is so essential. Words are not just for motivation in the moment, they are for transformation across a lifetime. The words you repeat daily eventually shape habits. Habits shape routines, and routines build a lifestyle. That lifestyle then determines the outcomes of your life. Every major achievement, every breakthrough, and every level of growth begins with the words that were spoken long before the results appeared. When you see your life begin to align with your declarations, you also develop trust in the process. You realize that what you say has power, and that awareness increases your responsibility. You no longer allow negative words to remain unchecked because you understand they will eventually show up in your actions. You also become more intentional with the positive words because you see firsthand how they influence your direction. This cycle of awareness and action strengthens your ability to control your life at its deepest level, not through external circumstances, but through the power of the tongue and the thoughts it produces. The journey of living out your words is both liberating and humbling. Liberating because you discover that you are not a prisoner of past failures or external labels. You can build a new life by speaking a new language. Humbling because it reminds you that every careless word has weight and every intentional word has creative power. It means that you must remain disciplined because the reality you experience tomorrow is being crafted by the declarations you make today. Would you like me now to combine all 4 expanded keynotes into a full script with an engaging intro, hook, transitions, and conclusion so it feels like one complete motivational speech? Everything you have heard comes down to one simple but profound truth. The words you speak to yourself are not just sounds, they are seeds. For too long, and many of us have allowed negative self-talk to become the gardener of our minds, planting weeds that choke out confidence, discipline, and vision. But the moment you take control of that inner dialogue, everything begins to shift. When you understand the power of your inner voice, you realize that the greatest battle is not outside of you, it is within you. The world does not determine your identity, your words do. And when you decide to speak differently, even for just 3 days, you interrupt years of destructive patterns and begin to lay the foundation for a new life. Those words take root, shaping your identity, and that identity begins to guide your actions until your reality aligns with what you have spoken. Do not underestimate how quickly transformation can begin. You may think change requires years, but all it takes is a decision to start. 3 days of intentional words can light a fire that reshapes your future. And when your life begins to reflect those words, you will not only change yourself, you will inspire everyone connected to you. So today, choose carefully what you speak over your own life. Stop rehearsing defeat. Stop repeating the language of failure. Begin speaking the words of life, strength, focus, and destiny. Your tongue is the key to your future, and the moment you use it with intention, you unlock the person you were always meant to become. Your words are building your tomorrow. Speak wisely, speak boldly, and watch your life transform into the very image of what you declare.